Good morning, I'm Pauline Verzosa. It is Tuesday, the 10th of February, and we're bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. The House of Representatives received a third impeachment complaint targeting Vice President Sara Duterte, this time led by religious leaders and legal experts. The group argues that holding the Vice President accountable for anomalous expenditures is a moral obligation to the Filipino people. Senator Risa Hontiveros says she is open to all possibilities for 2028, including a bid for Malacanang under a unified opposition ticket. The senator reiterated that her primary goal is to present the strongest possible candidate against the current and former administration's allies. And authorities have launched a probe into disturbing videos showing alleged hazing and physical abuse involving police recruits in Lamitan, Basilan. At least 70 personnel have been relieved from their posts, while investigators verify claims of brutal welcome rites that left dozens of recruits injured. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. And now first on the agenda, another impeachment complaint has been filed against Vice President Sara Duterte, this time from a group of religious leaders and lawyers. And this adds to mounting efforts at the House to pursue her removal over her alleged misuse of confidential funds. More details in this report.
The third group to file an impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte arrived at the House of Representatives shortly past noon on Monday. The complainants are composed of priests, nuns, and lawyers, joined by ML Party List Representative Leila de Lima, who endorsed the complaint. Like the first two impeachment complaints, the filing cites culpable violation of the Constitution, betrayal of public trust, bribery, graft and corruption, and other high crimes as grounds to remove the Vice President from office. These stem from the alleged anomalous spending of 612 million pesos in confidential funds. Also included in the complaint is the testimony of the alleged bagman of Vice President Duterte, Ramil Madriaga, on the supposed misuse of the Vice President's confidential funds.
She signed certification saying that she ordered how the millions of pesos would have to be the millions of pesos, how they should be spent. So we have everything. We have witnesses. We have documents to prove that the Vice President violated her oath.
Ang usapin po ay hindi lamang political, hindi po kami mga politicians. We believe there is moral concern, and we pray that Congress impeach forthwith Vice President Sara Duterte for the cause of truth, even due process.
Earlier, the House Secretary General transmitted the first two impeachment complaints to the office of House Speaker Boji D. These were endorsed by party-list groups from Makabayan Bloc, Mamamayang Liberal, and Akbayan. VP Sara responded in a video statement to the impeachment complaint endorsed by Akbayan, whose chairman emeritus is Senator Risa Hontiveros, a known critic of the Dutertes.
Ilang ulit ng hayagang ipinahayag ng kanilang pinuno ang kanyang intensyong tumakbo sa pagkapangulo. Isang malinaw na indikasyon ng pampulitikang motibo sa likod ng kanilang mga hakbang.
But Congresswoman Leila de Lima pushed back.
Shallow yung kanyang magiging defense, legally speaking. Kaya doon na lang siya pumupuntirya sa political aspect of the whole case. I call it an extraneous argument, yung ganyan na mga pagtirada niya sa akbayan at kay Senator Risa Hontiveros.
The Vice President also said the complaint endorsed by Akbayan allegedly lacks supporting evidence, but Akbayan dismissed the claim.
Ano ba talaga, ate? Her video doesn't project confidence. Nangangamoy takot na tinatago sa bravado sa kabila ng napakaraming palusot. Ayaw at hindi pa rin niya maipaliwanag. Sino ba? Sina Mary Grace Piatos and friends.
For her part, Vice President Duterte maintained that the Mary Grace Piatos issue has been repeatedly raised despite what she says are the results of investigations showing no direct violation in the use of confidential funds.
Paulit-ulit nilang ibinandera ang isyung Mary Grace Piatos bilang umano'y bahid ng katiwalian. kahit na sa kabila ng lahat ng investigasyon ay wala silang naipakitang kahit isang direktang paglabag sa paggamit ng confidential funds.
For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
And now in other news, Senator Rodante Marcoleta has challenged Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Commodore J. Tariela, to a friendly debate. Marcoleta issued the challenge in response to Tariela's invitation for him to join a future maritime domain awareness flight to the Kalayaan Island Group. The invitation followed Marcoleta's remarks suggesting that the Kalayaan Island Group should be surrendered since it is not within the country's exclusive economic zone or EEZ. The senator has since said that his statement was taken out of context. In response to the debate challenge, Tariela said the Philippines stands on its territorial integrity and legal entitlements in the West Philippine Sea is clear and should not be subjected to public debate.
Pakisabi niyo kay Commodore Tariela, kasama si Justice Carvalho. And sino ba yung professor sa UP?
Si Batong Bakal.
Para sa isang friendly debate. Bago po yung pagpunta doon. Para sa ganun maayos natin. Para sa kapakanan ng ating mga.
And political pundit Ronald Llamas criticized senators who have failed to clearly express support for the 2016 arbitral ruling on the West Philippine Sea. In an interview on The Big Story, Llamas said it was disappointing that some senators remain unsupportive of the landmark ruling which upheld the Philippines' maritime rights under international law. He also hit back at Senator Alan Peter Cayetano after being labeled an oportunistang balimbing. Llamas denied having any conversation with Cayetano to arrange a meeting with the Chinese ambassador. He further stressed that he has been consistent in his stance on the West Philippine Sea issue, noting that he was among those who even helped lead the Philippines' arbitral case against China under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea.
Senator Cayetano disclosed that you are an oportunistang balimbing because your position on the West Philippine Sea, he claims, was very different from your position today. Did you ever change your stance?
Ang galing naman ng mga senador mo dyan, Ses. Masyado naman nila ako pinapasikat. No? Mukhang nakatingin sa salamin si Senator Ambassador of Jesus Christ Alan Peter nung sinabi niya yung pagiging oportunista at pagiging balimbing. No? I've never changed my position. At medyo natawa ako doon sa sinabi niya na I was trying to convince him doon sa position ko para kumbinsihin si Pinoy na huwag magsampa ng kaso sa UNCLOS. Medyo nakakatawa yon. Dahil kung may kukunin ako na tao para kumbinsihin si Pinoy, baka hindi siya. Dahil siya yung bumalat kay Pinoy dati na si Pinoy daw ay abnoy. Publicly. Kaya hanggang pumalaw si Pinoy ay galit na galit sa kanya. Kaya dagdag pa dyan ay isa ako sa nag-lead nung case sa UNCLOS. At hindi ko alam kung nakita niyo yung pictures ay nandun ako sa harapan. Dun sa victory lap.
We all know that. But he claims that you had arranged a meeting between him and the then Chinese ambassador?
Well, hindi ako nag-arrange para sa kanya. Ako, kausap ko talaga yung Chinese ambassador dahil kasama sa trabaho ko yon as political affairs. No? At hindi lang yung Chinese ambassador, na mismo yung foreign minister, si Wang Yi, na-meet ko yan. As well as yung defense ministers ng Vietnam, asking them how they deal with China. Because they've been at war for 1,000 years. So, bahagi ng trabaho ko yan. To meet ambassadors, actually hanggang ngayon, ginagawa ko yan, and to meet foreign ministers. No, lalong-lalo na dito sa usapin ng West Philippine Sea. No? Na nung panahon na yon ay nagsimula sa Scarborough.
Malacanang, for its part, is standing firm on the country's claim over the Kalayaan Island Group and other territories in the West Philippine Sea. Palace Press Officer Undersecretary Claire Castro stressed that no part of Philippine territory will be surrendered to any foreign power. This comes after controversy sparked by remarks from Senator Rodante Marcoleta suggesting the Philippines could give up the island group. Comments he later said was just taken out of context, prompting reactions from government officials and maritime experts.
Wala pong anumang bahagi ng teritoryo natin o anumang interes ang iso-surrender sa anumang foreign power. Pero dapat din po tayo maging tugma sa ating ipinapahayag. May kasabihan nga tayo, ang magtanim ng hangin, bagyo ang aanihin.
Now don't go away, we will be back with more stories right after this break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning and welcome back. I'm Pauline Verzosa, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and we give you the context behind the headlines. Senator Risa Hontiveros says she is open to running for president in the 2028 elections if chosen by the emerging united opposition. The senator said she is willing to take on any role, including a presidential bid, as long as it helps present the strongest and most credible candidate for the opposition bloc, which now includes members of the Liberal Party, Akbayan, and Mamamayang Liberal. Hontiveros, though, clarified that discussions on specific candidates are still premature, as the group is focusing first on unity and shared principles ahead of the 2028 race.
I would be willing to take on any task na hiningi ng united opposition. Yun yung intention o desire ko na lalaban kami sa 2028 na mag-alok sa ating mamamayan ng pinaka-malakas at credible na kandidato.
And to give us a clearer picture of the emerging political landscape ahead of 2028, we are now joined by political analyst, Professor Eric De Torres. Good morning, Professor. Thank you for being back here on Morning Matters.
Good morning, Ms. Pauline, and to all the viewers of Morning Matters.
Okay. Prof, before we talk about names and numbers, let's talk about timing first. It's only February 2026 and 2028 is still 2 years away. Pero gaano po ba ka-importante ang timing? And is now already the time for candidates to start sending out their feelers?
Well, timing is everything in politics, Pauline. The way that we intend to look at it as such is that if you declare too early, you will, of course, opponents will get to prepare, and of course, looking at it as such as the lesson learned during the early candidacy of former Vice President Jojo Binay, wherein we could relatively see, and back then our experience or his experience of really the demolition job that surrounded his candidacy for the presidency by declaring too early. So really we can learn from this experience na talagang paghahandaan ang isang kandidato, lalo na from the two top posts, and especially for any presidential who would declare their candidacy too early for that matter.
Okay, and yet we're already seeing some of the front runners as early as now, Professor, no? And of course, Vice President Sara Duterte is leading presidential preference polls. As far as WR numero, naglabas sila last year, no? And I think nasa 33% yung preferential rate ni VP Sara. But how should the public read these numbers at this stage? Would you say they're a real indicator of what we can expect in 2028?
Well, two things, Pauline. First of all, the awareness of the people that candidly and with the public statement that VP Sara is really running for the presidency for 2028. So in terms of awareness, siya lang kasi yung nasa isipan ng mga tao na mayroon talagang choice sila. For that matter, wala pang nagde-declare na clear, let's say, as compared to other candidates who really declared openly and publicly that they are running for the presidency for 2028. So this time around, hindi rin din naman clear na sinabi ni Senator Risa, for example, na she will be running for presidency. Ang statement niya was, she's ready for whatever task, but she did not in any way declared na I will be running for president for 2028. So, pwede nating i-interpret yung numbers na mataas kasi siya yung may preference-wise, siya yung alam na aware yung mga tao whose statement na will be running for presidency for 2028.
And Professor Eric, may factor din ba dyan yung unity team as we know nung 2022 elections, 'di ba? Alam naman ng publiko na parang nagkasundo ang Marcos at Duterte na mauuna muna ang mga Marcos and then susunod ang Duterte clan, ang family. Although alam naman natin nagkahiwalay na, no, nabuwag na itong unity team. And is that even strengthening the bid of Vice President Sara Duterte for the presidency?
Well, we could see that in the unity team back then, 2022, the solid numbers of really the strategic alliance of both of these families. Yun nga yung na-observe ng mga analysts na talagang solid North at saka solid South nagsama talaga at nagbigayan sila ng boto. Makikita natin dun sa turnout ng number of votes na nakuha ng presidente at saka ng vice-presidente. This time around, it's very much different because wala ng alliance. Talagang completely, we could say na talagang yung awayan or yung hidwaan sa kanilang pamilya ay talagang mabigat. But it seems that the solid South is there for VP Sara. So strategically, if I'm to get the numbers, we just have to look at to solidify the Mindanao and Visayas and get some percentage in the north, and mathematically you can still win because consistently we could say that the numbers of VP Sara is consistent in Mindanao as well as some parts basically of the Visayas. So all I have to do basically is to get a certain percentage from the north and mathematically I could win, and that would also depend on the number of candidates who will be running for presidency.
So Sara Duterte is a clear front-runner, pero Prof, sino ba ang ideal running mate for Sara Duterte in 2028? Because names are being floated from Senator Amy Marcos, Senator Bongo. Who would you think would make the most viable running mate for her?
Well, of course, for me, the viable running mate for VP Sara should be someone coming from the north. Doesn't necessarily follow that it could be Senator Amy. So, but again, formidable individual who came from the north, that is basically to solidify and get that percentage that I'm talking about to convert it basically to votes for both individuals or for both candidates for the president and the vice president. Kasi magtutulungan ng boto. Pwedeng buhatin ni VP Sara kung sino man yung manggagaling sa norte na yun at i-transfer yung votes ng south to that person, and that person naman can eventually convert his numbers to VP Sara for the north. So ako strategically I would be getting someone who's either popular or a formidable candidate coming from the north, or specifically bailiwick coming from Metro Manila.
And that leaves us to the next question. Who would be a worthy opponent for Sara Duterte if she runs for the presidency? Sino yung magiging formidable opponent sa kanya? So the opposition hasn't declared a standard bearer just yet, but you have Senators Hontiveros and Bam Aquino already confirming that they are in talks with the former Vice President Leni Robredo, although hindi pa talaga sinasabi, Professor, kung sino yung magiging kandidato ng oposisyon. But first, let's discuss ano ba dapat ginagawa ng united opposition at this point? Is that focusing on unity, unifying themselves, on the narrative, or should they be rallying already at this point behind a specific candidate?
Well, at this juncture, we could observe that they are already consolidating. But I think it's also a strategy on the part of the opposition to just float names. But really, I think they're still in the final, in my guess, in my observation, they're still in the final stage of basically preparing who will really run as the opposition candidate for 2028. That's my assessment, because if you again declare too early, with all possible narratives that can be attacked, that can be used as an attack to a particular candidate, mapaghahandaan talaga. Another formidable, and I think this one is a dark horse beyond the table or beyond the choices of Duterte, and for example coming from an opposition, would be the rise of Raffy Tulfo. Raffy Tulfo is basically would end his term as a senator for 2028. By 2028, he could either run for a higher office or seek re-election. If he run for higher office, I think for a vice president, he could be a formidable VP candidate that would be in tandem for either opposition or for either the Dutertes, because he has a solid following basically, and the market votes of Raffy Tulfo is very much steady. But of course, he could also think of running and go for the presidency. So who knows? I think for these people talagang, and for these individuals and for these politicians, talagang wait and see at nagpapakiramdaman pa. Masyado pang 2026 is very crucial and critical, because we could observe the polarization na talagang clear yung distinction ng lines of alliances of politics as we end this year and come 2027. Klaro na yan, at tapos na ang positioning nitong 2026 by end of this year. So yun, makikita natin talaga. But I think more important, we also have to be ready and be observant in terms of the impeachment of VP Sara. Right now, hindi pa nakasalang pa yan, pagdidesisyonan pa, and in any eventuality na umakyat yan sa Kamara, umakyat yan sa Senado at lumusot sa Kamara, it's going to be a game changer in terms of the decision of what will be the decision of the upper chamber, and if VP Sara will now be another scenario, if hindi talaga siya po pwedeng makatakbo because of the impeachment, game changer siya in terms of candidates really at the forefront running for the presidency.
Okay, but Professor, what about Senator Risa Hontiveros? She did say that she is open and willing to run for president in 2028, but she also did clarify she's prepared to take on whatever role the opposition entrusts to her. Would Senator Risa Hontiveros make a viable national contender for presidency in 2028 should she emerge as the opposition's choice?
Well, of course, she's surrounded by what do you call this, controversies as well. The way, and I think it's really the challenge, I think, in terms of Senator Risa is really more of the branding, and at the same time her positioning in terms of these issues. Yung challenge kung siya man is how will they be able to rebrand her, and at the same time people are looking now for yung talagang makamasa, makatao, ganon. So paano nila i-brand or i-rebrand si Senator Risa in that particular position? Of course, we all need to give credit to Senator Risa for, of course, Alice Go's talagang case, talagang yung committee niya yung nagsiwalat niyan. Pero other than that, it's really how you rebrand her, kasi parang something's really lacking in terms of her being a presidentiable. So formidable, yes, but I think the opposition must, really rethink. And for all we know, and this is just my assessment, for all we know, she's being floated as such, but who knows? It could be another, another Leni Robredo by 2028. So we really don't know at this juncture. Aileen.
Maaga pa, Prof, kahit 2 years away na lang ang 2028. But then you also have the likes of DILG Secretary John Vic Remulla giving away feelers. He didn't really explicitly say na tatakbo siya, no? Although he did say na he won't run without the endorsement of President Bongbong Marcos. At this point, gaano po ba kahalaga pa ang endorsement ng Marcos brand, pati na rin yung political machinery ng administrasyon?
Well, the machinery is always there. It's of course there's this saying there's the rule of the equity of the incumbent. However, with the continuous, of course, pagbaba ng trust rating at saka approval rating ng ating pangulo, mahihirapan yung kanyang i-endorso. But of course, maaga pa naman, pwede pa nating sabihin na they could turn this around in terms of really hyping up and ensuring the accountability measures of the flood control scandal and really improving the economy. But 2 years is actually very short. So tingin ko in terms of the political capital, the numbers of the president will either be, if they would run it again, would either be neutral or slightly na bababa in terms of the percentage. Bababa siguro, I don't know. My guess and my assessment is, at least 2-3%, or it could either be, a neutral. But then again, it would be very challenging doon sa kanyang i-endorso at kung sino man o formidably na mabuo ng administrasyon at i-endorso niya. Kasi ang tanong dyan, mag-iisip ako kung magpapa-endorso ba ako kung patuloy na mababa or neutral yung political capital or yung endorsement capacity. Because at the end of the day, the endorsement capacity and political capital of the president will be in any way measured in terms of his governance and his ability to address the issues that is confronting the country right now. So eventually malaking pagsubok siya at malaking hamon siya paano magde-depart kung sino man yung e-endorso. At kung ako mag-iisip din magpapa-endorso din ba ako considering na napakababa at or either neutral yung trust rating or approval rating ng Pangulo.
So that's something candidates must also consider. But just as a final question, Professor, let's talk about voter psychology. There's still a sizable block of undecided voters, at least from the survey of WR Numero. That's at 22%. What does that tell you about how fluid the race is? At ano na ba ang hinahanap ngayon ng mga voters? Would you say that their preferences also changed as seen in the recent midterm elections?
Yeah, we could see that a lot is still undecided at this moment. They're still waiting for that candidate that could really address issues. And I think this 22% and I guess most of the people really is really looking for that candidate who would give hope amidst all of these issues of allegations of corruption. Our economy is really not really doing well. Looking for jobs and so on and so forth. So we're not really in a good place right now. And I think a candidate who would be able to position and address themselves like that, could most likely win and get that 22%. At the end of the day, Kairin, it's really more of the targeting and really positioning yourself as the alternative of this basically candidates, either a Duterte or coming from the administration. Right now it's a battle of narrative and positioning, good positioning, and at the same time the right branding, or if you may, rebranding on the part of the candidate, so that you be able to target that 22%. And by the way, a part of this is really looking at the youth sector or the youth votes, which I think in 2028 is going to be a game changer, not just at the local but as well as the national level of elections.
All right, well, we're gonna leave that there. Mahaba-haba pa rin to. Marami pa po tayong aabangan. But for now, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. That was political analyst, Professor Eric De Torres.
Thank you.
Now do stay tuned. Morning Matters. We'll be back after this short break. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The Justice Department assured the public that all cases related to the flood control issue are moving along. DOJ spokesperson Attorney Polo Martinez told Storycon that 3 cases involving a sitting senator are part of a batch already submitted for resolution, while a separate plunder complaint against another lawmaker is now under preliminary investigation with hearings ongoing. Timelines vary per case depending on filing dates and pending motions.
What I can say is, as we've said before in the department, is that as soon as the complaint is lodged with the DOJ, we're working with a time frame. That time frame is 60 days, extendable by another 30 days.
And in other news, eNet Philippines, a civil society network advocating education reforms, has welcomed Congress's adoption of the National Education and Workforce Development Plan 2026 to 2035. The group described the 10-year plan as a key framework to ensure policy continuity beyond political cycles and a coordinated long-term approach to education. It also praised the plan's focus on early childhood nutrition and education, interagency coordination, and sustained public investment. At the same time, eNet emphasized the need for safeguards to ensure reforms are inclusive and effective. The group also added that the plan can only become a true milestone for equitable and democratic education if its implementation is participatory, rights-driven, and accountable, supported by a strong, well-resourced public education system. And now to talk more about the new 10-year education plan, we are now joined by Serafin Molina, the National President of Teachers, Inc. and a member of eNet Philippines' Education Cluster. Good morning, Serafin. Thank you for being here on Morning Matters.
Good morning. Thank you, Ma'am Pao, for this very important interview.
Ayan. Okay, so before we discuss this 10-year education plan, let's get to know eNet Philippines first. Explain to us what you guys do and who you represent.
eNet Philippines is short for Civil Society Network for Education Reforms. No? It's a national coalition of civil society organization, or CSO, focused on transforming Philippine education system. So it acts as policy advocacy network that advocates for education reforms to make education more equitable, inclusive, and of higher quality. And it also works with government, communities, school, NGOs, and other stakeholders to influence education policy and practice. Also, it helps develop to promote alternative learning system to reach marginalized and excluded groups who might not be served by traditional schooling. It also engaged in budgetary advocacy, pressing for stronger investment in public education, including budget for learners with disability, alternative learning programs, and other specialized education initiatives. So usually, eNet is represented by, it's not a standalone charity or school, no? It's a network of civil society or organization that come together around shared goals in education. Specifically, it represents 100 members of the CSO of the Philippines that focus on education and community development, and acts on behalf of the marginalized, excluded, and vulnerable sectors, or the MEBs, groups who are often left behind by mainstream education system. Yun po. eNet Philippines is a civil society coalition that pushes for fair, inclusive, quality education, especially for those who are often overlooked, and represents a broad range of community and advocacy organizations working together to shape education policy and investment across the Philippines.
So it's really the coming together of different sectors, no, Serafin? And it's very important because we are in the midst of an education crisis here in the Philippines. Alam naman natin yan lahat, ano? And now, eNet has called for the government for a whole-of-government approach in implementing this 10-year education plan. Tell us, how important ba is this 10-year education plan, and how would it look like in practice?
This is very important. It's because as a result of the EDCOM2 report that we have what we known as the learning crisis, no? So we just came from the pandemic, and as a result of that pandemic, no, ang daming mga learning gaps, no, nagkaroon ng shift from the usual classroom to online, which is not the usual thing that the DepEd is doing, no? So the creation of a 10-year plan will really matter for the next 10 years kasi from this point, no, we have seen the result of the EDCOM2 report, no, na talagang may malala tayong learning crisis, no, and masyadong hindi yun magandang paningin para sa atin na nasa education sectors. It's because yung ating mga bata, no, na tinitrain ngayon will not become too effective also in the future.
And this EDCOM report really exposed a lot of the weaknesses in our education system, Serafin. I think the most alarming data there was that a lot of our students are functionally illiterate. After grade 3, hirap na sila sumabay sa curriculum. But for you, what would you say are areas that need the most urgent attention? Is it sa teachers, sa classrooms, or sa curriculum?
Nako, lahat yan ay salik ng importansya ng in terms of the teachers kasi, no, after the pandemic, no, may mga may dynamics na kailangang mabuo for the teacher to become effective. So most of the time, no, itong pumasok tayo sa after ng post pandemic, no, marami tayong mga tinatawag na new priority concern. Lalong-lalo na sa part ng teacher, halimbawa yung mga trainings, no, masyado tayong hindi nabulaga doon sa nangyaring katatapos na pandemic natin, and marami tayong nakita doon mga importanteng mga strategies na pwede dapat nating ma-continue, no, para or mapag-aralan pa. And then pagdating sa mga students naman, no, parang tingin ko itong mga batang to nasanay nung pandemic, pwedeng they can be present or not, no? So parang hindi naging masyadong maliwanag sa kanila na importante yung kanila na kailangang matuto sila. So parang hindi natin alam kung if this is brought also about by the pandemic itself, no, na nagkabiglaan, nagkabulagaan na ganito pala ang magiging sistema ng pag-aaral. And of course, no, salik din dyan yung tinatawag natin na curriculum kasi as of this time, no, the DepEd has not been doing a very good way of really making our curriculum fit for the students, no. Andyan yung kakasimula pala natin ng K-12, no, na nagkaroon ng maraming mga issue din niya sa K-12 regarding preparation ng teacher, kahandaan, no, there are so many learning competencies na masyadong full pack na kailangan aralin pa, no? So parang dumaan sa proseso na parehong yung estudyante at saka yung teacher ay nag-aaral, no? So kaya doon tayo nagkaroon ng malaking learning gaps na ngayon ay inaani natin dahil hindi masyadong na-address ng DepEd itong mga issue to.
And of course, nandyan pa rin din yung problema ng congestion, But Serafin, what would you consider as low-hanging fruits dito sa 10-year education plan? What are some of the things that can be implemented immediately?
Siyempre, importante talaga natin na maiayos natin yung curriculum, no? Importante na all the stakeholders should sit together and plan for a curriculum that is attune with the call of time. Kailangan responsive yung curriculum natin, no? Most of the time kasi, no, dahil nga doon sa iniisip natin na kakatapos lang ng pandemic natin, no, na ang daming masyadong congested ang curriculum, ang daming kailangang ituro, tapos with a limited time, no, hindi masyadong natutuunan ng pansin ng mga teacher yung strategy or yung tinatawag natin na what do you call this, yung learning competencies, no? So hindi natin masyadong na-address yung learning competencies na yan. Kaya yung mga learning competencies na yan, dahil hindi naging focus masyado ng government yan, parang nag-focus tayo more on the structural thing, yung mga physical thing na may kinalaman dyan sa pagtuturo na yan. So yun yung naging result kung bakit hindi nagkaroon ng ganitong crisis. No? Yun na lang yun na lang teacher na hindi siya aligned doon magturo, no? Dahil syempre hindi naman we also need teachers, no? So minsan may tinatawag na hindi alignment. So hindi niya dapat itinuturo yung ganyang subject, pero siya yung wala nang ibang teacher na pwede magturo, so siya na nagtuturo.
Right.
So isa yun sa mga factors. Aside from dahil dito sa Pilipinas hindi naman tayo sanay na nag-go online during that time, no? So nagulat tayo, hindi naman lahat ng kabahayan ay merong internet o kaya merong gadget na pwedeng magamit. So ang tendency nun ng mga bata, hindi sila masyadong nag-focus sa kung paano sila matututo. At saka ang mga teacher hindi rin masyadong nakapag-adjust kung ano yung best way para mas makapagturo sila.
And one thing that ENET also emphasized is the need for safeguards to ensure that reforms are inclusive and effective. I wanted to zero in on that, Serafin, kasi minsan nakakalimutan natin isama sa diskusyon yung marginalized learners. So we're talking about yung out-of-school youth, yung learners with disabilities, and even yung mga indigenous peoples and those in conflict-affected areas. Ano ba ang what would you say is the most viable plan para maging inclusive itong 10-year education plan natin?
As a teacher, inclusion for me is not a slogan. No? It's a daily reality I see in my classroom and community. So if this plan truly wants to include marginalized learners, it has to meet learners where they are, not from where the system wishes they were. So first, plan us and strengthen the expand flexible learning pathways, especially for out-of-school youth. Many of them didn't leave school because they didn't value education. They left because of poverty, work, early pregnancy, or family responsibility. So programs like ALS, community-based classes, and blended or modular learning should be treated as equal and high-quality option. So not a second-class alternative. So when learning adjusts to life, learners comes back. So for learners with disability, inclusion means more than placing them in regular classroom. The plan must ensure trained SPED teachers, assistive devices, accessible classroom, and learning materials in format that they can actually use. So as teacher, we want to help, but we can't do it alone. When the system equips us properly, learners with disability don't just participate, they thrive. For indigenous learners, inclusion starts with respect for culture and identity. So the plan should support mother tongue instruction, culturally relevant lesson, and partnership with IP elders and leaders. So when learners see their language, history, and values reflect in school, education stop feeling foreign and start feeling like it belongs to them. So in conflict affected and disasters prone area, the priority should be safe, continuous, and trauma-informed learning. So that means mobile teachers, temporary learning spaces, psychosocial support, and coordination with local communities. Learning should not stop because of violence or crisis. Sometimes school is not the only safe space as a child has. So most importantly, the plan must invent in teachers on the ground, teachers on the bridge between policy and learners. So if we are trained, supported, and listen, so we can adapt lessons, stop learning risk, and respond with compassion and creativity. So for me, effective inclusion happens when the plan does three things. One, it brings education closer to communities. Two, removes barriers instead of blaming learners. And three, trust teachers as partners in reform.
All right. Well, we are joining you in this call for reforms in our education system, and hopefully this will become successful 10 years later, and we will hold our government officials accountable to that. But for now, thank you very much for your time and for sharing your insights with us. I was Serafin Molina, National President of Teachers Inc. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now in other news, several police officers are now under investigation following the circulation of disturbing videos showing alleged hazing and abuse in Lamitan, Basilan. In the videos, newly assigned police personnel were seen being slapped, punched, and physically assaulted by fellow officers during what authorities initially described as initiation. The National Police says more than 100 officers have complained of abuse, with at least 30 undergoing medical examination for injuries.
May mga 30 na po tayo mahigit na napamedical at base po doon titingnan po nila kung sino po yung may mga halimbawa may mga pasa o mga hematoma na kung saan maaari makadagdag ebidensya upang palakasin yung pong sinasabi po natin na anti-hazing po na ginamit po sa kanila.
The PNP reiterated its zero-tolerance policy against hazing, warning that those found responsible will face both criminal and administrative charges. The Napolcom Bangsamoro Regional Office has also launched its own investigation, stressing that hazing is illegal and will not be tolerated within the police organization.
Zero tolerance din po ang Philippine National Police kaugnay po ng mga hazing sa training at sa mga welcome rights. At sinasabi po ng ating PNP na mananagot, kriminal at administratibo ang lahat ng mga mapapatunayan.
Meanwhile, a recent survey by Okta Research found that a majority of Filipinos trust the national government to handle the country's problems. Conducted from December 3 to 11 last year, the survey showed that 55% of adult Filipinos have confidence in the government's ability to address national issues, while 20% disagreed and 25% were undecided. Trust varied by region, with the Visayas recording the highest at 68%, followed by Mindanao at 58%, in both Balance Luzon and the National Capital Region at 49%. The survey involved face-to-face interviews with 1,200 adult Filipinos. Now don't go away, we still have more matters to discuss right after this break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The government is looking at more ways to make air travel more affordable for Filipinos, starting with improvements in airport infrastructure across the country. And mobile journalist Ivan Tarinque has that report.
The Department of Transportation, or DOTR, is set to extend runways in regional and provincial airports across the country, including those in major tourist destinations, in a move aimed at lowering domestic airfares. The plan also covers new airports that will be built in the future. According to the DOTR, several regional and provincial airports currently have short runways, making them unfit for jet aircraft that require a minimum runway length of 2,100 meters. By extending runways, larger aircraft will be able to operate in these airports, helping spread operational costs among more passengers and potentially leading to lower airfares.
Then may physical limitations ng ating mga runways because of the topography of the area. Pagdating sa mga bagong airports na itatayo, lahat dapat ng runway must be 2,100 meters.
In addition to runway extensions for larger aircraft, the DOTR is also working with the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines, or CAAP, to provide airports with night rating capabilities, including the installation of additional lighting. This will enable airports to accommodate nighttime and early morning flights, offering passengers more travel options and further helping reduce airfare costs.
Kung kaya namin makatulong at maayos namin ito, at para maibaba yung ating pamasahe, gagawin naman po na.
The DOTR and CAAP are also studying ways to lower terminal fees in airport under their jurisdiction. Officials say they are reviewing which fees can be reduced and will implement lower terminal charges if found feasible.
I will ask CAB to do it, to submit a report para makita yung talagang breakdown of their fare structures.
Kapatid Mobile Journal Ivan Tarinque, we are One News.
A nun's viral vocation story is sparking fresh discussions on love, sacrifice, and personal calling ahead of Valentine's Day. And our mobile journalist, Daniel Dayaw, has that report.
A sister's love story recently went viral online. Some say it's a classic right love at the wrong time, but this Valentine's season is a reminder that love comes in many forms.
Mas mabuti na lang dito ka na kaysa mapunta ka pa sa iba.
Sister Jovi's vocation story has sparked conversations about love, sacrifice, and personal calling. In her speech, she shared how she chose to enter the convent despite being engaged. Her former boyfriend supported her decision and respected her calling. In a message to One News, Sister Jovi hopes for her story to continue inspiring others, encouraging them to choose the higher value. But when love means choosing your own path, how do we know it's real?
It's a word that we always use, but it's really hard to define. For me, love is about sacrificing yourself for the greater good of the other person. Loving is about giving rather than receiving.
According to Dr. Joyce, love is universal. It can come from others or even from oneself, highlighting the importance of self-love and healthy boundaries.
Self-love. It's also important. We need to love and care for ourselves, and that is also sometimes called boundaries. It's not about rejecting others, but it's about protecting yourself.
Inspired by Sister Jovi's story, we asked Filipinos how they navigate love and whether they ever had to choose between loving someone or themselves.
7 years ago, doon nag-start yung relationship namin. Tapos 2 years ago, doon kami nag-break. Naging mas better kasi kami para sa isa't isa. Nung minahal ko yung sarili ko, mas minahal ko din siya.
Kaya naman sigurong mabalance, basta wag kang mawawalan para sa sarili mo.
But what if you're torn between love and personal goals? How should you choose?
Conflict. There are two types of conflict. There's one conflict that is called conflict of morality, and there's one that is about conflict of personality. For example, conflict of morality, na in love mo yung best friend mo na may asawa pa na. O in love ka naman talaga. Pero that is a conflict of morality. So even though it's love, we need to let go. Kasi maling klaseng love yan. So when it comes to na conflict of personality na love, for example, mahal kita, pero ano ba, i-give up ko ba itong trabaho ko na nandito sa Amerika? Then it's a personal choice.
Valentine's is a time to celebrate love, but it's also a reminder that love isn't just about romance. It's also about following your heart. Mobile Journal Daniel Dayaw, we are One News.
And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you just the right start to your morning. Let's make the day matter. I'm Pauline Verzosa. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.